everyone. As folks come in, thanks for being here. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, share your name, where you're zooming in from, your kids' ages. Excited to have you here today. Welcome. As you're joining, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We love to know who's with us. Hi, Chris. Nice to see you.
Hey, Audrey, how's it going?
Good. Love seeing friendly faces. Chris is an amazing dad. Are you in LA, Chris?
Yes, we are down here. What's the beach? Malibu Beach.
So
Malibu Beach.
fun. What a great
Yeah,
place for the summer.
yeah.
As you're joining, hello, Melissa from Florida. Feel free to type in the chat, introduce yourself, share where you're zooming in from. We love to know who's with us. And we will get started because we don't want the folks who are here on time to be having to wait. And we got a lot of great content to get to today. So we're going to dive right in. Hello, everyone. My name is Audrey Wisch. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Curious Cardinals. And today we're going to talk about how to help your child find their interests as a high schooler. Overview, I'm going to introduce myself and the company we run at Curious Cardinals and introduce our amazing panelists who are three extraordinary mentors at Curious Cardinals. And then we're going to dive in. We have a lot of questions for them and their impressive journey, how they figured out what lights them up, and impart some wisdom for you and your kiddos. And then we will open it up to Q&A, which you can type in the chat or raise your hand in the last 15 minutes. And then we'll wrap up and share a little bit more about how we can continue to support your families as you hopefully stay part of our communities. So a little bit about Curious Cardinals. I started Curious Cardinals 6 years ago when I was a student at Stanford. I was a history major who thought I was pre-law with my 10-year life plan set and aspirations to be the next Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And then the pandemic hit and Stanford sent us home. I started tutoring kids online and working with those kids observed they weren't just struggling in school, they were disengaged and uninspired. They were absorbing and regurgitating what they read in a textbook, but they didn't know why it mattered. So that inspired me to apply what they were learning in school to their interests, the world around them. One of them asked for math help. I wasn't as passionate about math, so I called Alec. Alec was an aerospace engineer at Stanford who loved math, and instead of drilling math equations, Alec showed them how math makes airplanes fly. And suddenly the student wasn't just learning the math, he felt genuinely connected to it. And that's when we realized there was a real magic to the near-peer, passion-based, project-based learning model. It's 6 years later, we have a roster of 1,000 extraordinary college, grad student, early career professional mentors like the three who are joining us today, working with thousands of students around the globe. And Curious Cardinals matches students to near-peer mentors who they look up to, who they see themselves in, help them find what lights them up, and help accomplish projects with real-world impact they're genuinely proud of. And more recently, in May, we just launched a new product called the FlightPlan. The FlightPlan is an AI voice college tool that helps high schoolers navigating their journey, and the data-driven objectives, helping find opportunities and helping hold students accountable in addition to mentors. So that's a little bit about what we do. We have an amazing, vibrant community. We host lots of events, and this is part one of a panel series featuring our amazing mentors this summer to talk about helping your kid find their path. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to our amazing mentors to introduce themselves. We're going to dive in the session. So take it away.
Hi, everyone. Super nice to meet you. My name is Nala Owens, and I'm a graduate of Harvard's class of 2025, where I studied in our social studies honors program, which is essentially just economics, politics, and philosophy. I've spent the last year in Mexico City as a Fulbright Fellow in the Binational Business Program, where I worked at a university entrepreneurship center, helping college students help their dreams come true. And it's super exciting for me to get to work also as a Curious Cardinals mentor, where I focus on writing, essays, entrepreneurship, debate, and public speaking with your students. I think on the slide we also have in high school, I served as a youth rep and did a lot of political advocacy. As you can see here, some pictures from my first ever protest in life and my first time ever speaking at the UN, and also some media opportunities I had with the New York Times and some other sources of the like. And with that, I'll pass it on to our next mentor.
Everyone. My name is Sammy. I am from New York City and I went to the Dalton School K through 12. I graduated from Yale in 2024, so I've been out for a couple years now, and I got my BA in the history of science, medicine, and public health. That's one major with a very long name. While at Yale, I was both pre-med and involved in the performing arts, which has translated into the kind of work that I do with Curious Cardinals. I mentor everything from science and math to musical theater blogs and musical theater summer camps and quite literally everything in between, which is so fun for me. It lets me engage in both of my passions that I've had since I was a high schooler or even a middle schooler. Since graduating, I have pursued a career in the performing arts. So I've been involved in multiple theater stage productions, also doing some film and TV work. And I have my license as an EMT, so that is also something that I do sort of on the side. I call it my muggle job versus my wizard job, which is acting. And over COVID, which I see on the slide, I organized a meal relief project for the residents staffing the COVID floors at 3 different New York City hospitals, which was a really valuable experience for me. And yeah, I can take a look at my high school extracurriculars. Sorry for the lack of photos. I've lost some photos over the years, but this captures it pretty nicely. I did a lot of performing arts in high school. I also was engaged in a lot of different medical things. So I tried to take every single shadowing opportunity that I could. I even traveled to Poland for some. So that's that photo all the way on the right with the Polish words on the wall. I also was involved in Model UN. I did a lot of speech and debate in that capacity. I did a lot of community service work, and tried to sort of meld all of my passions into one whole person, which is me. So yeah.
Hello, everyone. So happy to be here and talking to you all today. My name is August. I grew up in Washington, D.C., where I went to public high school at a school called Jackson Reed. It's the biggest public high school in D.C. Then I went on to go to Yale. I'm currently at Yale. I'm a rising junior, and I am studying the humanities, which is kind of a big blanket major where I'm mostly focusing on English and creative writing. Yeah, at Curious Cardinals, I also work mostly in writing things academic, so kind of working on analytical writing and also working on lots of creative writing with students, which is very, very fulfilling. Let's see, on the next slide, so some of the things I did in high school, I also actually did a lot of theater myself. You can see me, the one where I'm wearing a tie. I was not doing some cool business thing. That's me in a play. That's me in 12 Angry Jurors, 12 Angry Men. I was also the captain of my cross country team at school. And I also did a lot of stuff in terms of writing. So I founded my school's creative writing club, and I did a lot of work on that personally, which I included in parts of my college application. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Well, thank you all so much. You are so impressive and inspiring, and we're so grateful to have you as mentors. But we are here today. We got to just hear a little bit of your brief kind of where you're at now. I'm sure it wasn't that clear at the onset. So I just love to start and open it up with, how did you first figure out what you loved? Were you like out of the womb, Sammy was singing musical theater and perhaps August too and running cross country? Did it take some steps? Like let's kind of bring us to like, I'm an incoming 9th grader. Where were you at in that journey? And what were some of the pivotal milestones that really shaped who you are today as early high school?
I'm happy to kick us off because I also think it's so fun that I was a theater kid as well. I know, like we have the trifecta here. That's so fun. And I also wanted to say I'm very glad that this panel is happening because I came into 9th grade with no clue of what was going on or what I wanted to do. When I saw the title for this panel, yeah, lesson 1, have your kid do theater. When I saw the title for this panel, I was like, as a 9th grade student, I would have loved nothing more than to be sitting here because I walked in with a variety of interests that I thought had no place together. I was really interested in theater. I'd done debate in middle school. I didn't really have a clear picture in terms of my future plan, let alone an idea of how to get there. And I think one of the things that really helped me starting off was just trying anything and everything. Any and every opportunity that presented itself, I saw it as an opportunity to make friends, as an opportunity to reach out. And I also had the fortune of being at Phillips Exeter, which is a boarding campus. So it's like every single second of my spare time I was spending in some kind of new club meeting, whether it was going with a friend or doing something that I really wanted to do. And one of my biggest engagements that ultimately led me to pursue UN advocacy was one of my best friends was like, I'm going to a Model UN meeting. I'm like, that sounds lame, but I have nothing better to do, so let me go. I ended up becoming the president of my Model UN team, which led me to meet a number of really excellent and awesome mentors. And I think another kind of really pivotal experience for me that was really a result of just kind of saying yes to everything was a trip that is pictured on my slide where I went to Alabama with my school on a civil rights track where we worked and collaborated with the Equal Justice Initiative on mass incarceration issues. And while I'd always generally been interested in politics, advocacy, and was generally aware of racial injustice, I hadn't ever seen a path of how it could be possible for me to make a difference. And I think one of the biggest changes in my life was when I saw an opportunity where I could make a difference and actually really address an issue. So I think a lot of us you'll see on the screen and a lot of mentors in general, and rather than, focusing on one position or one thing that we did, have what people are calling now portfolio careers or portfolio experiences, where we have kind of a collection of different opportunities for leadership and different personal projects that have been, centered around issues that we care about or an issue that you care about. So for me, that was educational access, socioeconomic inequality, and mass incarceration. And I found a wide range of opportunities to explore those issues, which I'm happy to talk about later. But I think tip number one is really just try anything and everything, take a lot of opportunities. And I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later on how to whittle those down once you've gotten your kind of spread and you've gotten your foot in the door in a number of different places.
I love that. And I like two things that stand out to me is kind of just saying yes and trying something at the onset can be as deep as doing Model UN because your friend does it and then end up being president. That was me with debate. I thought the upperclassmen on the debate team were super cool and ended up being debate president or signing up for the EJI Alabama trip, and that's shaping the trajectory that you want to take professionally. So that's really amazing. Sammy or August would love to hear like what was that early high school like for you all?
Yeah, I can.
Go for it.
Go ahead. Okay, thank you. I came into high school. I actually was in COVID online for my freshman year. So I was coming in as a sophomore and honestly having no idea, coming in off of a year of generally doing nothing and sitting in my room. I was like, I don't even know like what a portfolio is going to be. So for most of my sophomore year, I wasn't actually doing much. But I had come into high school. I had been writing for several years. I actually, as a kid, I was working on a novel that I, had been like kind of chipping away at for several years. And so that was one interest that I knew I wanted to pursue. But I didn't end up pursuing that until my junior year, where that was when I was like, what if I made a creative writing club? It's weird that we don't have one. So that's kind of like a story about, taking leadership in things that you have been doing for a really long time. I think another great example of that is I had been a runner since my parents made me do it when I was about 7 years old. And I'd kind of just been doing it for a very long time. And then when I was a rising senior as a junior, I kind of realized, I can, there's an opening as a captain next year, and I can actually make a big difference on the team that I've been, working with for a super long time. And I had already kind of had the experience of leading the creative writing club and gotten a lot out of working with kids who are younger than me and kids who are my same age, and genuinely seeing them take an interest in something that I myself had a very deep interest in, and kind of being able to shape that. And so that was a big part of my experience, was finding ways to take those leadership positions. I'd also say I did not do theater before I came into high school. I actually, if we're talking about random ways we got involved in things, my sophomore year, my school just happened to be putting on Les Miserables, which is my dad's favorite musical. I know, and it's my favorite musical now too, because I'm slowly becoming a father. But I grew up listening to those songs as a kid, and I was kind of, what was that?
I think it was a mistake. Keep going.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I grew up listening to those songs as a kid, and so I was kind of just like, why not? I'm like between friend groups at the moment, and I ended up loving it.
August, before I get to Sammy, you were so nonchalant about the like, I don't grown up writing, sophomore year, just came off the pandemic really tough, and then I decided to write a novel. Can we a little demystify that a bit? Like, did that come from
Yeah,
like music
sorry.
industry? Were you always like, I want to go to Yale? Tell me a little bit more tactically, because I think parents are navigating motivated kids who are like, no one cares about my writing, to unmotivated kids. And hearing a little bit more about what you were like would be really helpful.
Yeah, totally. I think I was in a weird niche kind of middle zone where I had actually this book randomly just I had started writing it as a fourth grader, like in class when I was bored. And I had been writing it. I wrote the first book, probably I finished it in middle school, and then I started the second book. Actually, I wrote most of the second book during COVID, so I'd been working on it for a super long time. And this was just kind of this thing that, was on the back burner of my mind. Like it was always something I was kind of thinking about. And I don't know. I think I also was in a position as a sophomore. I remember this very distinctly. I had a conversation with my mom where I was like, I don't really want to go to college. Like, I'm just not interested. And she was like, "What?" She's like, "You're going to college." I was like, "No, I'm not." I was very uppity as a sophomore in high school, and I thought that I knew better than she did. And so I was kind of like not very interested. I wasn't really on the path of, thinking this is going to lead into something that is going to helped me get into Yale and helped me. Wasn't really even interested in going to Yale. But as you know, I started doing high school more seriously as a junior, and I thought of the idea to start this creative writing club. It just became this thing where I was like, oh, this is something that I really, really enjoy, but that also like is a thing that you can study at school. Like this is a thing that you're allowed to study. I think something that I would say to kids that don't really know what they're doing is if they have an interest, I think sometimes they really just don't really realize they can study that and like make it into a career. I think it doesn't really occur to a lot of them because a lot of their peers aren't talking about it in that way.
Love it. Okay, well, Sammy, you are the like Renaissance woman, musical theater queen to like pre-med
Med pipeline.
extraordinaire. Where did this start? Tell us about little Sammy entering freshman year at Dalton.
Absolutely. Um, so little Sammy entering freshman year at Dalton thought that she wanted to be a naval pilot. So let's like we're talking like I am a very passionate person, and so I found love in a lot of different places. But theater and medicine were always top of mind. I had been performing since I was quite young, like fourth grade and beyond. And I did it like semi-professionally, and so that was both really exciting, but kind of also it was tricky, like being a semi-professional child performer in New York, like there's a lot going on. And while I never lost my love of performing, I did kind of get jaded with the idea of pursuing it as a career. So that kind of shifted into the love box where I still did it because I loved it so much, but I had kind of written it off as a career. Obviously, things changed. But in doing that, I found love in something else, which was medicine, and I could see myself doing a career in medicine. Specifically, I wanted to be an OB/GYN. So every opportunity that I could, I was looking for, community service work I could do with reproductive health. So I organized a panel of reproductive health experts at my school as a fundraiser for a sex education organization in the Philippines. That was something that I did just because I wanted to and because I loved it. I was looking for shadowing opportunities. When I went to Poland, I was shadowing an OB/GYN. So at every moment I was looking for places to kind of tap into that love. And I think in general, that's kind of what all three of us are touching on, I think, is finding the thing that not only sets you apart, but the thing that you genuinely want to do. I think there are definitely pressures in high school to, oh, this is the thing that's going to make me the most competitive, but then you're doing it and it feels like a chore. Versus if you're just excited to do the extracurricular, it will never feel like a chore. And I always wanted to do more. So that's kind of how I ended up where I ended up.
That's something we talk about all the time. Our little slogan recently we've been saying is the lottery favors the genuine. I was on a run with a friend from Stanford this morning who was asking about the flight plan. We were both talking about how it's so genuine. Everyone likes to say, like, what code did you crack? What did you figure out? And if I'm sure you feel this way, your peers who you went to college with, these are folks who are so genuinely passionate. Where did that come from? How did your parents navigate achievement culture versus letting you cultivate your own intrinsic motivation? How did you navigate that college pressure versus, again, allowing these things to be so genuine, which is the environment that allowed you to be so successful and so extraordinary?
That's a very good question.
I guess I can hop on this one again. Keep in the same order. I think a healthy dose of independence at that age in high school is so important because, I mean, and I have a sister who's high school age right now, so I'm like on the other side of this. But no matter how much you tell someone to do something, if they don't want it for themselves, they're never going to excel the way that they could in something else. And for myself to discover what that was, that like really lit me on fire, that really kind of got me going, because it can be exciting to, do a lot of different things. And you're like a student, and I feel like there are a lot of things that can be fun. But I think that differentiator that you talked about, Samantha, with, what is it that feels like a chore? What is it that I would do willingly any hour of the day? I had something I called the 3 a.m. test in high school, and I developed this because I love sleep. And the 3 a.m. test can be anything that you want it to be. It can be the ice cream test. It can be the pizza test. It can be whatever you value. And my question for myself is, if I had to do this at 3 a.m. for a week, if I had to give up some of my sleep for a week, would I be sitting here regretting the day I was born? Or would I, really be like, this is worth it for me? And I actually quit a number of my activities on the basis of that 3 a.m. test. There were a lot of things that, I was excited to do it with friends. I was happy that I was doing them. But when it really came down to it, it wasn't something that I really wanted to invest my time in to excel in and do really well. But what did keep me up at night and what did was something I was talking to every single one of my friends about all the time was there are so many problems in the world in terms of social justice. How do we fix them? I was obsessed with this idea of talking to my friends. One of my friends was really into medicine, and she in her free time would be doing practice sutures in her room. And as she would be doing these practice sutures in her room, I'd be talking to her about, okay, so if we call this senator before this major vote, then this thing is going to happen. And she's like, Nala, you talk about these things the way I talk about surgery. And that was one of those moments where you're taking these kind of internal reflective cues of what is it that I'm willing to kind of sacrifice to be willing to be able to pursue this thing. What is it that I'm willing to kind of give up? What is this internal indicator that I am passionate about something? And then what are these external signals? If I talk to the people who love me and care about me, what is the thing that they keep hearing? What is the thing that keeps coming up? And while those don't have to be end all be all indicators of what you should be spending your time on, in my case, they were indicators that, hey, I really do love, theater. At the time, I was in leadership in one of our drama clubs at school, and I was doing main stage performances, and that was taking up a lot of my time, and I loved it. But I was thinking to myself, how can I combine this with something that perhaps lights me up even more in the middle of the night? So I started doing a number of benefit concerts and benefit performances where I could donate proceeds to different causes that I really cared about. So sometimes when you get to that point where you're like, maybe this isn't something I would stay up at 3 a.m. for, how can you kind of identify that interest and link it to something else that perhaps you're more passionate about? How can we start to put these things together? And with my students these days, what I do is something I call the interest matrix, where I do exactly what we just talked about. So we take let's say a key skill or competency. In my case, that was, let's say, performance. And I tried to identify how can I take this competency of performance and combine it with my interest in social justice. And I just literally made a list of all the different ways that could look. And that's how I kind of came to this conclusion of maybe I want to kind of start spending less time on some of these other things and start investing more time in this, but I can kind of keep both of those interests alive in this way. But I'd be curious to see how you guys made that decision as well, because it's tough. It's tough to say no to certain things or to decide to spend your attention on something more particular.
You keep the same order, or do you want to go?
I'm down.
Yeah, I really am resonating with a lot of what you're saying, especially just about the interest and what is really driving you in these things. I think if we're talking specifically about what you all as parents can do, I think my parents did something that I'm really grateful for. like every time I think about it, I'm like, God, I'm glad they did this, where they said, you have to be busy. We're not going to tell you what you need to do, but you need to be doing something. And that was kind of, that was when I was going into sophomore year. I was like, I don't really care about college. Like, I'll just do whatever. So I was like looking into all these clubs. I like joined a photography club and I joined this. I can't even recall all of them right now, but I was keeping myself busy. And then it just became very, very apparent that these were things I just like did not care at all about. And when I happened to the theater, and it was something that, like you're saying, kept me up at night. Like this was something that I was getting unbelievably strong friendships from. This is something that I was like coming home and telling my parents, like, you guys won't believe what happened today, or like, you guys won't believe, like, let me tell you this line. Like these were things that it was obvious that I really cared about. And I obviously pruned those other clubs after about 2 weeks, but I kept busy with that one thing. And my parents were like, okay, that's enough for now. And I think I started small. I only had, at the end of my sophomore, I was only really doing 2 big extracurriculars. But those things ballooned into me taking on a leadership in my schools. Like we called it the Players, which was like our 12-person theater group. And it ballooned into me, taking on that leadership role in the creative writing club, or, trying to help students outside of class, or trying to help people with their college essays outside of class. Like I started with those core things that I trimmed from the others, and then those ballooned into other things because I was keeping myself busy.
In terms of something that my parents did that I'm so grateful for, they really resisted the trends. So I remember when I was in high school and late middle school, coding was huge. That was everything that anybody was talking about. It was girls who code. I fully was the only girl in my extended high school friend group that wasn't in Girls Who Code. It became a joke. I became extremely close with two of my 2 guy friends that I'm still very close with because they obviously weren't in Girls Who Code. And it met every Thursday, and we got lunch because all my friends were in Girls Who Code. And I think it would have been really easy for my parents to say, well, this is the new thing. This is what people are talking about. This is what's going to make you stand out because this is the fad. And they easily could have pushed me into that. And at the time, arts was very much on the outskirts of that. People weren't really talking about that as being the trendy thing. It was all very STEM focused, STEAM focused, I should say. They added the A in there eventually, but it was mostly STEM. And my parents were very against that, and they really wanted me to do what made me happy and also what I was good at. And they knew that deep down I didn't have a future as a coder. That was not my truth, and they knew that. And so they were way more supportive of me pouring energy into the arts aspect. When it came to medicine, it really took them by surprise. I have no doctors in my family. I definitely gravitated towards the humanities. But I just had this love for biology, and I loved the clinical aspect of medicine and the advocacy aspect of engaging in women's health. And they were surprised but excited for me, and they were kind of like, run with it, see how far you can take it, see how happy it makes you. But they, to this day, would always have kind of classified me as an arts kid with this fun, medical zest for medicine. So that really, I was kind of the bizarre child with that respect. So
I'm curious for you all, what role other people played in your life? Was there another person that helped you see a pattern in yourself that you could not yet see?
I can go if we want to go out of order. I had incredible teachers and mentors that were instrumental in navigating my high school journey. My theater and my dance teacher stand out. But I had an incredible English teacher who also would come to all of my performances, would talk to me about medical things, even though that wasn't his discipline, obviously. And I think having those support systems outside of your family can be really useful, because as much as I love my parents, I didn't always want to listen to them. And so obviously that's where the mentor comes in as well. But just having somebody there to make suggestions and to be supportive when you take action, I think was really crucial for me.
I can step in next. I think for me, I was very lucky to go to. I think my school was kind of a double-edged sword, where I went to a school where there were a lot of kids. I think there are a few too many kids, and it's actually now less kids because they opened up another high school in the district, and so now there's rezoning things. It's beside the point. But so I had a lot of friends, and I think my teachers had a little bit too much on their plate. So I actually was in a situation where I got a lot of benefit from the people that I was friends with. I think in two ways. The first way was obviously I had friends who were really, really enthusiastic about the things that I was enthusiastic about. They're like, that's amazing. This is making you so happy. Where I think that was partially the culture of my school, where people were surprisingly like open towards. I like to say that my school like we didn't really have like jocks, or we didn't really have the stereotypes of those things. And I think having kids in your kid's life that are really open and aren't really kind of steering them, or like saying, I'm doing this thing, like, do you want to do this thing with me? Although obviously it can have its benefits. I think just friends that are excited that your kid is excited, I think is probably the best thing you can have in their life outside of a really, really strong mentor. And I also had friends who indirectly steered me toward the things that I ended up investing my time in, where they were kind of friends who just weren't, they were interested in, there's no other like good way of putting this except for just like not really paying attention to school or to the things that they cared about. And those people really kind of bogged me down. And I think breaking away from those people also put me into the course. I can generally point to a moment where it put me onto the course of, I want to spend less time with those people. I'm going to try out for this play. And that's how it happened.
I love that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
You are who you surround yourself with. We always tell parents, you cannot control who your kid sits with at the cafeteria. You can insert a positive mentor role model of their life though. Nala, I might pivot us a little bit, and I want to hear from you first, which is you talked about having a framework and having the bravery to cut something. We see with so many students, this feels paralyzing. They're twofold. One, I don't know where to start. I need to find the perfect thing. And then I check back in with them a quarter later and they haven't even started an email. And our whole thing of like, just try things. Like action is knowledge. Even if you don't like it, that's a learning. But even more, to cut something feels so scary for kids. Can you talk me, how did you have the bravery and self-confidence to develop the 3 a.m. test? And what did that look like? Like little Nala tactically, and like what advice would you give for parents helping navigate their kid to be authentic to who they are, whether that's trying something, taking the plunge, or cutting something and having the bravery to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And the reality of it is little Nala was just so devastated. I was like, I have all of these things that I love, but I'm only one person. And I think one thing that really helped me actually bouncing off of this last point was kind of the mentorship that I had in the near peer arena, and then also the adult mentors who were in my life. Because in that sense, I could see what it looked like to be excellent. I could see what it looked like when my friends were pursuing their interests to the highest degree possible. I had examples of what that could be. And I knew that at the current state that I was in, when I was spread between 50 bajillion things, that it just wasn't going to be feasible for me. And I think sometimes that feeling of freeze when you have all of these interests and you're trying to try some new thing, it's just like, I got so much going on. Like this waits until the end of the day when it's already 3 a.m. I've passed my test time and I just have no gas left in the tank to try this thing. So it really originated out of a place of I feel really stuck because I do not have the time right now to invest in myself the way that I would like to. And just seeing everyone around me continue to kind of pursue things to the extent that they could was really inspiring, and like something has to change. So I do not want any of your students to get to that point where they're feeling that way. But I think having positive examples of, hey, like you might have to give some things up, but this mentor that you have was able to really achieve some excellent, amazing, and awesome things that could also be in your future. You just have to make some choices. And in terms of like how I actually sat down and got to the point where I was able to make those decisions, was the kind of that 2-part situation that I talked about before. So I was already really tired, which is where this 3 a.m. test came from. I was already doing the thing where I was up late at night, kind of trying to do my homework, just trying to keep it all together. And I arrived at a moment where I was sitting at my laptop and it was super late at night. And I was just like, wow, like, would I really crack open an energy drink for this activity? And the first activity where I said no, unfortunately, to all my speech and debate friends was with speech and debate. I loved it and I had excellent friends there. And I really enjoyed going to competitions, but I knew that when I got to those competitions, I was like, ugh, it's just like, oh my God, like I would rather be doing Model UN. I would rather be spending more time thinking about how to solve these issues that I really care about in a real arena, in a real platform. I wanted to go outside of my school community and I wanted to see what impact that I could have in a lasting way on the world. And I think that was kind of the first time that I ever saw this test really work for me. And sometimes it's not that obvious, and sometimes it's not that easy, which is when I think it's also helpful to begin being really imaginative about if I had an extra hour in my day, what could I do with it? If I had an extra hour to spend on figuring out how to lobby my senators, what could I do with it? And I had an excellent adult mentor who had significant experience in the United Nations advocacy arena. And the more I talked to her about her adventures and the things that she was doing in her professional life, the more I was like, whatever is going on here, I want that. And if I have to cut out an hour of my life in debate, I want that. So sometimes there can be like the negative component of it where you're really actively thinking about what could I live without? What doesn't really bring me alive right now? What could I cut out? But I think the other half of that sometimes parents are missing is that you have to be really imaginative about what you're replacing it with. Because when that vision becomes more appealing and more attractive than perhaps what you're cutting out, I think it can be an easier transition for your students to say, okay, maybe it is going to break my heart a little bit to cut out an hour of swim every week or cut out an hour of debate, but I'm just so excited by this new vision of what my time could look like that it's going to feel worth it. So I think if you try to cut without necessarily having as much of a clear vision of what could fill that space or what could be done instead, it can feel even more devastating than if you kind of invest the time in creating that forward-facing vision.
I love that. And that feels so much more like an abundance versus scarcity mindset. Sammy and August, similar note, but a little bit different flavor of it. And yes, we have some underachieving Harvard and Yale folks that we are speaking to today. But our team member Julia, who as mentors maybe you've spoken to, likes to say that if you don't like the journey to Harvard, you probably won't like Harvard. And there's a lot of people who think, I need to go to this school, and they don't necessarily want to put in all the work that it will take. But as you have shown, all the work that it takes can actually be the most joyful thing. I'd love to hear for you guys, what's clearly you're all incredibly extraordinary discipline, work ethic, like what spoke that? And at what point did you have to think about, I can't spread myself so thin, I can't do everything? And like, clearly you were able to find a few avenues that you could really have depth and excellent to do them so well. So how did you guys reconcile that as high schoolers? What did that look like for you, Sammy or August? We'd love to hear from you.
Something that stands out to me the most was in my pursuit as a performer, you have dancing, you have singing, and you have acting. And so there are the archetypes of the singer who dances and the dancer who sings. So what are you first? And this is a very tangible moment where I knew that yes, you can be a triple threat, and that kind of is a metaphor that you can use for all of your activities. But when I was a freshman in high school, I loved ballet and I did a ton of ballet and I loved musical theater. And in order to do the number of musical theater shows that I wanted to do, I couldn't level up in ballet. Like I couldn't go to the number of classes that I needed to go to. And so I was at this crossroads where I really did need to pick one or sacrifice the depth. And so I think there's this idea of, you can either have depth or breadth. And I don't think that's entirely true. You can, as long as your breadth is relatively contained, you can go deeply into all of these things. But if there is a moment where you have to sacrifice depth for breadth, I would say don't do that. There has to be sort of that conscious choice of, okay, I still dance. I still danced throughout my performing journey, but it was never my primary thing again. And that's okay. You can find ways of, tying it into your life without sacrificing going deeply into something else. And I think that was a key lesson for me.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that's very true for myself as well. I think I, in high school, was the kind of worker where it was really helpful for me to focus on certain things very specifically. I think I ended up having a breadth because I ended up doing a lot of things. But for example, when I was doing the spring musical, I cut like doing outdoor track. I decided I'm going to do cross country in the fall. I'm not going to do the fall play. I'm going to sacrifice that and I'm going to focus my energies onto these more specific things. And it really was for me about, you can do all these different things, but you have to know where your limits are. And so it really was, and I think that's carried into a lesson I've actually taken into college, because college is also a place where you can end up doing a lot of things that take a lot of your time. But yeah, I think my story might be less specific, but it really was for me about just finding the times where you want to focus intensely on something. You really want to pour yourself into this thing. And you can have those things that, put on the back burner momentarily for those. And then you go into that next thing and you're like, okay, this is what I'm have the energy with to come home at night and be talking about it and talk to my friends about it and have all these things. I think for me, it really was not worth sacrificing your energy for the thing you wanted to put the most energy into, just to have another thing that you're doing at the same time.
Love that. That is such insightful advice. I'd love to ask, and then I'm going to open up to questions. I see someone's already typed their question in the chat. If you could two like rapid fires, we'll do a few more at the end. If you could tell your high school self anything, what would you tell them?
I can kick off to give you guys some time after your wonderful, beautiful answers. First would be dream so big. Like if you think you're dreaming big, dream bigger. And the background of that statement is anything you think you want to do when you grow up, you can start it now. And I think that's kind of where things started to change for me. I had like this list of all of these crazy things that I really, really wanted to do when I grew up. And I was like, what happens if I just like go for it? And by the time I got to college, a lot of those things had been knocked off just because I started and I decided right then and there was when I was going to start. So dream big, dream bigger, whatever you want to do in the future, you can do now. And then just like believe in yourself, believe that you're going to have the ability to handle these challenges, believe in your ability to build something that you're really proud of. And I think sometimes when you let go of the fear of like, what if I can't do it? Or like, what if that's not for me? Or whatever the case might be, is when you can really start having a lot of fun and having a lot of really awesome experiences.
I would tell myself that college isn't the finish line, it's the starting line. I think I had this idea of I need, I mean, and this is, this isn't something that you can necessarily take away because that's, the structure that we live in right now. But I had this idea that once I got into the school of my dreams, everything would be solved. And then you get into the school of your dreams and you're like, wait, I have another 4 years. You're like, wait, this is the starting line. And so I think taking the pressure away from that moment of achievement to you're going to end up where you're going to end up where you need to be. The universe has, you will end up where you are meant to be, and then from there, that's when you can really start to build.
Yeah, those are both fantastic. I think what I would tell myself is there's really the best thing you can do as a high school student is just try and lead as full of a life as possible. And that's kind of a vague piece of advice, but actually on my slide, one of the things I put was I worked at a pizza place for a while with a bunch of my friends. And, it was like my first time having a job where I was like making income for myself and I was like saving up for something. And it felt like a real experience. And I think a lot of the other times in high school, I maybe didn't do this one specific thing because I wanted to, I don't know, do something with my friends or go do this cool thing over the summer where maybe I'm not like doing this internship, but I really want to try out what it would be like to backpack. And so I tried that for a second and I was like, this is amazing. And I had all these, I think really the best things that I did when I was in high school, the things that made me the person that was able, who knows, the person that got into Yale all those years ago, all those 3 years ago, was doing all those things that gave me a really broad perspective about the people that I was spending my time with and the things that I actually want to do in the future. And, having those conversations and putting myself in those kind of weird and awkward positions where I'm just, trying to see what it's like to be a human person. I think that's something a lot of parents need to push their kids into more, is like, just go be a person.
That's a great segue. The next little mini rapid fire question I'm going to ask is, what advice would you give to the parents of your high school self? And Ray asked a question. Ray, we're going to answer your question after. And then parents, if you want to either raise your hand in the chat or start commenting any questions in the chat, then we're going to open up to parent questions. But what advice would you tell parents of your little high school self?
So much is out of your control and is out of your kids' control when it comes to college and career. So focus on the things that you can control. And if that's encouraging your kid to pursue their passion that you can control, whether or not they get into, their dream school because of that, is in many ways out of your hands. So pour into the happiness of it rather than the pressure.
Yeah, I can go really fast. I know we're trying to do rapid fire, but I have a quick story to tell, which is actually not about me, but it's about a friend of mine, where she, she's a super, super hard worker and unbelievably, probably smarter than I am myself. And she had all these dreams of going to these great schools, and she probably should have gotten into them, but she ended up getting into this school that was like one of her lower down picks. And she was super upset about it at first, but then it turned out where she was like working like unbelievably hard, and she became like, she was throwing her passions into these things and realizing that she was like at this new school, she was like this powerhouse in a way that she might not have been at that other school. And I think, and I don't know what I think that might have been a bad story to tell for this, what I'm trying to say right now, but I think what it really is there is always an opportunity to be passionate wherever you end up. And practicing being passionate as a high school student is probably the best thing you can do to prepare yourself to take advantage of wherever you end up.
Yeah, kind of retweeting what I've just heard here and thinking about this beautiful sign behind us, imagination matters. I think as a parent, your imagination is something beautiful that you can share with your children because you have perspective that they don't, of what the world looks like beyond college. And exactly like Samantha said, anytime your kid is like, okay, like I need to do this thing and get into college and X, Y, and Z, you can ask them, then what? Like, what would you do to kind of continue that after you get there? Because I think sometimes as a kid, it's so easy to be like, okay, I just need to apply to the college and then I get in and then everything goes as it's supposed to go. But reminding them and having the ability to imagine what could come next, I think will help them to build, their passions in a way that's really sustainable and not focused on this kind of singular goal, which can ultimately be like really disappointing sometimes. So encouraging them to imagine what comes next and how this will be something, would this be something you did even if it didn't get you into college, and et cetera, I think can be really helpful.
I love that. I almost made college decisions about track, and a person said, are you going to run professionally? So why are you making college decisions about that? That just reminded me of dream big, spark the passion. Okay, I'm gonna ask Ray's question, and then if you want to raise your hand or if you want to ask a question in the chat, we're opening it up to all the wonderful parents and any kiddos who are here to ask their questions. Ray asked, what if the interests are what is viewed more as a hobby, like Pokemon card or sports card collecting and trading in sports? You can tie those things into skill building on pitch, negotiating, finance, and asset investment, but it's not something that is really a college portfolio building activity. Or even things like organizing groups for video games and pouring energy into research to beat games, but again, not something that is portfolio building. How would you all respond to that?
I feel like we all would have a lot to say here, but I would just challenge the definition of what is portfolio building, right? Like, I think especially when it comes to colleges, they don't really care what specifically your kid is doing as long as they're pursuing it to the highest extent that is available to them at that point in time. Like, I wrote my personal statement about baking bread because I I loved baking bread. Like I was one of those COVID girlies. I loved baking bread. And it was such an important part of who I was that had nothing to do with anything that anyone would traditionally think is an impressive thing to do. So I think if you're doing something that allows you to build your skills and you're pursuing it to the highest extent, maybe you're writing blogs about these meetups that you have with your friends when you're playing these games, or maybe you create this organization and you get to do like meetups around the country of all these different people who are playing games. If you're demonstrating your ability to take something further, I think that's what these schools are really interested in. And also like hopefully what your student is interested in too. Like if they really care about this thing, how far can they take it? What can they do with it? And I think that's what really matters. And this is something that I think a lot of us work on for longer periods of time with students. So I would totally recommend finding a mentor who can help them, but not sure if you guys had anything to add there as well.
Yeah, I would piggyback off that really quickly. I really like what you said about the portfolio. I think in my limited understanding of how the college application process works, what a portfolio is to colleges is like, I feel like it's what you're able to talk most eloquently about. It always seems like it's some niche thing that, you know, they've invested all this time in, but you can read it on the page. You can read that this is something that they care a lot about, have spent a lot of time doing, and have been allowed to kind of explore what that might mean for themselves. Because those are people that make a class interesting, as opposed to people that have, you know, spent a lot of time doing these things that they think they're supposed to do. And I would say, obviously, maybe don't let them only do Pokemon cards, but I think discouraging that as a thing that isn't useful because it doesn't build portfolio. I think there is still some use in having those smaller niche passions.
Amazing. Someone else DM'd me, and that's very much our spirit of Curious Cardinals. Find what lights your kid up, and there's so many things they can build and do with those. Someone DM'd me, what do you as a mentor do to help here? What if my kid starts and doesn't know what they want? How do you help them figure that out?
I love doing passion project work. I think it's so exciting. Curious Cardinals has amazing tools to help mentors with this. And there's an exercise that I love to do where you outline their interests, like communities or passions that they have, which might not necessarily align with interests. So, you know, you have sports, but maybe somebody is really passionate about, you know, climate change. You kind of like separate those two out, and then skills that you want to develop and how you might want to showcase those. And over the course of having my mentees do this exercise, it becomes immediately clear which actually excites them by the way that they talk about it. So if we're spending 10 minutes talking about one of their interests versus 2 seconds about, oh yeah, and I also, you know, play flag football, that's not that isn't valuable, but that's probably not what we're going to build the project on. So I think what mentors, or at least what I really do, is look for the opening that they give me when they're speaking about it and run with that. And then take that and say, okay, we have this and we have this skill that you want to develop. What if you did this? Or what if you did this? And then telling them, you know, think about this for the week. You don't have to do any of this. And giving them the option to say, no, I don't like any of it. And then starting from square one, which has never happened for me, but easily could. So.
Amazing. I am getting some DMs, and I'm getting, got a question in the group. Sarah asked the group, what advice do you have for rising juniors? They're starting thinking about college applications the next 1.5 years. Does the strategy changes there halfway through their high school years? And now that I'm getting more DMs, maybe we'll do, who wants to answer Sarah's question?
I can start with this one. I think you're right to think about kind of the strategy, if you will, changing as you progress through your high school years. Like maybe, not to say that you can't explore anymore, but maybe you're not telling your kid to do 10 different new clubs junior year. And maybe we're getting into some brainstorming about how we can further exercise some of this depth. So of the things that your student has done, this is a really great time to take an inventory of what really, like we've been saying, lights them up? What passes that 3 a.m. test? What are their friends talking about, them talking about, right? And starting to identify opportunities within those areas that really light them up to continue pursuing them, like we're talking about kind of at this like highest level, right? So for me, that was my junior year. I knew that I was interested in Model UN. I knew I was interested in solving all of these issues. I wanted to take that outside of my school. So my junior year was really about how can I transform these opportunities that I've had on campus into opportunities to get involved in my broader community and in the world at large. And that was kind of how I transformed that interest. And there are a lot of ways to think about doing that, but continue excelling in school and just do a personal inventory at the beginning of that year. What has worked really well? What maybe do I want to continue exploring? And what is it time to like do that 3 a.m. test for? And I think that's a really strong shift to start doing. What I will not advise you to do is do not spend your junior year thinking about this is my dream school and I have to go. I think that is one way to like really kill the fun of your junior year and set yourself up for some major disappointment. I think focusing on that, so then what? Like once I get into college, what then do I want to spend my time on? And finding ways to develop the skills to prepare you for those moments will lead to a much happier outcome, I think, your senior year than had you just said, okay, Harvard is my dream school. This is the only thing I will accept. I will spend every moment of my life trying to get there.
And totally. Any other quick junior year tips? Nailed it. Okay, 2 questions I'll combine. My son is very into staff for sports, from players to teams. Doesn't matter what sport it is. He can talk about it forever. Can you help turn that into a passion project? If so, can you recommend someone? We can recommend someone. But that's a great example. I don't know, August, the cross country, you've talked about cross country a lot, lots of time, lots of data analytics. We have lots of mentors I can answer, but if any of you have any thoughts, I'll let you respond.
Yeah, I don't personally know much about it, but I will say you can turn genuinely anything into a passion project. You can turn Pokemon cards into a passion project, and a pretty cool one, I'm sure. But if anyone else wants to touch on that.
Well,
I actually know a Curious Cardinals mentor that is doing that right now with the mentees. So you definitely can turn that into a passion project. He's working on a blog, I believe, and he's in 4th grade, which is crazy. So, and that doesn't necessarily have to be what your kid does, but I 100% agree with August. You can turn anything into a passion project, and that's the fun of it.
What if my daughter is unmotivated? What would you do as a mentor to help find what will motivate them? They won't listen to me, but what would your approach be?
I think this is where the near peer stuff does come in. Like I said a little bit earlier, it is like the cardinal sin of teenagers to listen to your parents in so many ways, especially when it comes to recommending things that they do. That's like, well, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. So I would say when it comes to motivation, finding, even if it's something small, finding something that they're excited about. There's something. Like it can be the smallest, tiniest thing. Maybe they like baking, like Nala said. Maybe they like, gardening. It can be literally the smallest thing and saying, okay, run with that. And then eventually it will branch out into something else. So that would be my recommendation. And you can have a mentor help your kid with that.
Just like one practical note on this, ask so many questions. Like I mentioned, I have a high school aged little sister. And for the longest time, I couldn't figure out, I'm like, this girl, all she does is go to the mall. So I started asking her, I was like, why are you going to the mall? What are you doing at the mall? Like, what's so cool about the mall these days? And she was always going into Barnes and Noble to find new records and to find new books. And I think by getting curious and asking those kinds of questions, you can kind of get at the underbelly of like what's really interesting her. And it was creative writing and it was kind of reading and all of those things that were so much more than we initially thought when she kept asking us to go to the mall. So asking some of these like questions about the things that they keep bringing up, I think can lead to some unexpected answers as well.
100%. That is so good. Well, I'm going to ask a final rapid fire question for you all, which is what question should you as a parent ask your kid? And then someone else asked about the flight plan. And then we'll wrap up by briefly sharing what is the flight plan and how we can best support here. But rapid fire, Nala, you perfectly set us up. What question? We always say lead with curiosity should parents ask their kids rather than the ones that get a 1-word answer like good or nothing.
I would say, what was your favorite part of your day or your week? I think you can learn a lot from that question.
This is a tough one. I would say, what are you not liking?
Yeah, I think asking questions about their energy, like, are you like how much do you have left in the tank? Like, are you burning the candle at both ends right now? I think that when that was asked to me in high school, I think I hadn't even realized it until my dad brought it up.
Wow, you guys are amazing. We are so lucky to have such brilliant, wise, wonderful mentors. Thank you all. I'll just briefly share. So at Curious Cardinals, we have amazing mentors like the ones here today that your students can work with. And we help with passion projects is our main thing. We help with academic mentorship too, but passion projects, whether a student comes in wanting to conduct scientific research, like maybe aspiring OBGYN, little Sammy did, or has no idea at all what they want to do, we help match them to an amazing young person like the ones here today to help them find what they love and accomplish real meaningful projects in the world. We also help with academics. So that's what we mainly do at Curious Cardinal. And we just launched something called the FlightPlan. And the near peer mentors are not going anywhere, but there's a lot of the parts of the high school process that are very data driven, objective, and not what our mentors are most uniquely suited to do. And so we launched a new platform that helps students see where they stand, find unique opportunities, competitions, programs, awards, hold them accountable, break down the steps. So some students have mentors in the flight plan, and it's a tool that they get to use. Sometimes students want to see where they stand to then inform what type of mentor they're going to want to work with. But we are wholly committed to helping students find what's authentic to them. And throughout the product, even when we help them define their activity sheet, like they would when they apply to college, we are always baking in moments for introspection, asking how meaningful this actually is to your kid. Why does this matter to you? So that is so much of what we're committed to at Curious Cardinals, helping your kid find their purpose and get there through mentors, through other resources we're building. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you so much, Sammy, Nala, and August. You are brilliant and wonderful, and we're so lucky to get to work with you guys. And we will be sharing this video so those who want to share this with friends and family can have their kids watch this. And we're opening up the flight plan again in August. So if you want to sign up, you can have an initial call with Sky, the AI agent, and get a little insight of what that looks like. And reach out with any questions. But thank you all for your time. And while your kid might not thank you today for taking the time to be here, they will thank you one day. Thank you, Sam, August, Nala. So nice meeting you guys.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you.